Good afternoon. I'm Heather McRae. I am a history professor here at Westminster. So we're going to have our speaker in just a moment, who I will introduce, but afterwards we'll have a Q&A session, so please look for the student ambassadors who will be up front on either aisle and line up to ask questions. When I first heard the theme of this year's symposium, The Languages of Life, my mind immediately went to this afternoon's speaker, Burton Richardson. He came to mind in part because he's traveled the world and learned and taught martial arts, crossing spoken barriers, sometimes with humorous results, as he'll tell you about today. But also because he's a lifelong student of the language of self-defense, of being able to read the tells and the patterns of those using force, training against resisting opponents in order to be able to know how to parry, counter, and avoid attackers in a kind of conversation of attempted and landed techniques. I often tell my history students about another famous martial artist, President Teddy Roosevelt, who boxed and introduced the first jiu-jitsu dojo in the United States into the White House. Teddy's the kind of figure I'd have to make up if he didn't exist. And he has a famous saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." This is true of Burton. After all, he's a founding member of the Dog Brothers, a stick-fighting martial arts group. Indeed, his martial arts credentials are a seemingly never-ending list, but include a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, instructor-level Krav Maga, instructor of many forms of Filipino martial arts, and Jeet Kune Do, among many others. In fact, he's one of the most well-known students of Guru Dan Inosanto, the primary student and good friend of Bruce Lee. If you've caught The Mandalorian or Ahsoka TV shows, you might recognize Guru Dan's daughter, Diana Lee Inosanto, who plays the antagonist, Morgan Elspeth. Movies run in Burton's blood, too. He's choreographed fight scenes and worked as a stuntman in Hollywood. For instance, he worked with Keanu Reeves on the movie Speed, as well as producing, directing, and starring in his own independent martial arts film, 1% Full, in 2007. Movies are apparently in his daughter Talina's blood, too, who worked as a stunt double in the 2021 movie Kate, while Burton was also working on stunts. If that's not enough, he has a biology degree from USC, where he was a catcher on their baseball team in the days of future Hall of Famer Randy Johnson, and was headed to med school, until he decided to follow his passion of martial arts. And that choice has taken him around the world, including coaching UFC fighters and at Abu Dhabi. Perhaps if Burton didn't exist, I'd have to make him up to go alongside Teddy Roosevelt. And to return to Teddy Roosevelt's saying, Burton also speaks softly. In fact, I don't know of anyone who is more generally and genuinely liked. He is too humble to tell you all of the things I just did, which is why this introduction is necessary. His success is because of his positive attitude and work ethic. And by positive, I don't mean positive toxicity. Instead, I mean he embodies the idea of shaping your life through hard work and prioritizing your goals, one of which is training and teaching the language of martial arts, which he's here to talk to you about today. Please help me welcome Burton Richardson to Westminster.
Well, I'd like to start with, I'm from Hawaii, and want to start with Aloha kako. Anybody know what that means? I think most people know what aloha means, right? Have a good idea of aloha. In the Hawaiian language, when we say aloha kako, kako means all of us. So aloha being a loving kindness, and instead of just saying, oh, love to you, love to you, love to you, we say love to everybody, including ourselves, which we'll get to a little later, which is very, very important. So, language and the martial arts. Professor McRae there did a very, very good job of introducing the idea that in martial arts is actually a language because it's a type of communication. And as you all know, language is how we communicate. And it can be verbal, it can be nonverbal. And through the decades, I've had a lot of experience going to different places where I may be learning from someone who speaks no English. They might maybe know what how to say hello or hi, but that's it. And how do you communicate? How do you actually learn from somebody that does not speak your language at all or any of the languages. So first, I wanted to just say somehow, now I know all of you are on a career path and you're going a certain direction. And I just want to encourage you, first of all, the first language to listen to is that internal language. It doesn't have to actually be spoken, but what do you love to do? You know, what do you love in your life? Where's that thing? If you look back and go, you know, since I was a kid, I really loved doing that. I would highly, highly suggest that you make that at least part of your pursuit. This is me when I was about 5 years old. Whoops, that's not me. Let's see. Let's try it like that. There we go. So, about 5 years old on Catalina Island, that's my older sister. And to this day, I remember what that little plastic sword felt like. It had this, can't really see, but the handle is purple, and it had a really unique sort of purple color. And when I think of that, it just brings up certain joy. And to this day, I had to tell you, I have a lot of joy in my life because I do the thing that I really feel that I was made to do. So, as was said earlier, I did well in school. I was a scientist. I actually ran a lab at UCLA Medical Center studying multiple sclerosis and its relationship to canine parvovirus. But my dream, my love really was martial arts. And it took me getting very sick and depressed to actually do that. And so listening to the language inside of you, listening to your heart really is such an important and valuable thing in your life, because you know you only have so many years, and we can do what other people want us to do for a career, but guess what? It may not be the most fulfilling. So, for example, let me introduce Dan Inosanto. This is, in the green is my mentor. I think most of you know who that is on the left. Or, I'm sorry, on the right. On the left, Dan Inosanto was Bruce Lee's, one of his very closest friends, training partner. When Bruce Lee went to do films, he asked Dan Inosanto to take over his school and teach. And you know, a lot of sparring, a lot of development. It was a constant research and development. So one thing in Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do is, it's not, okay, this is the martial art and this is how it is. Back in that time, if you did a martial art, you weren't supposed to do any other martial art. That was the only one you were supposed to do. Over time, that's changed because of Bruce Lee. Because he said, no, I'm going to go and look, I'm going to do research and development, look at a martial art, see if there are things I like from that martial art, and then I'm going to test it out in sparring and see if it actually works. And maybe it works for me and doesn't work for somebody else, or vice versa, it works for someone else and not for me. But each individual does the research and development themselves. And again, that is a kind of communication, which we're going to see in a little bit. I'm going to do a little demonstration with my daughter here. And you'll see there's it's not evident, but there is a communication. So I graduated from USC, got my biology degree. I had was in an honors program for writing and literature. And I was depressed, and I had digestive issues that turned out to be, as it went on, some very serious stuff. But I was in a very bad state. I ended up finding a place. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go to medical school because stress, it was ulcerative colitis, and stress exacerbated it. And my friends a year ahead of me in med school said, this is so much more stressful than undergrad. So I ended up living in a tiny little camper trailer where I could literally touch one wall, touch the other wall, and what you see there is the bed. And this, from here, you can see it's about 2/3 of the place. I lived there for 5 years. That trailer was in a parking lot of a dog and cat hospital in downtown LA, where there were drive-by shootings right across the street. I'd sometimes wake up and go out to my car. There would be bullets in the parking lot. I mean, this was not a good place to live. But what happened was, I could just do martial arts. And you know what I found? Happiness. I found happiness because I was doing just what I wanted to do. Partway in there, there was a time when I actually sat, I think I was probably 2 years into this, and I thought to myself, how am I going to get out of here and actually live a normal life someday? And I could not see a way out. So if you are ever in that and see, again, there's a voice in there saying, nope, there is no way out of here. This is how you're going to live the rest of your life. You're going to live in a trailer, in a dog and cat hospital parking lot, and that's it for you. And don't listen to the voice, because you can make your own voice. Okay? So from there, because I studied and studied and studied, I got to a position where I could start traveling. So I would, even when I'm living in this trailer, I would save money, and I would save and save and save. So basically, I took care of the dogs and cats at night so that I didn't have any rent at all. So all I had to do is pay for gas for my incredibly beat up car and make enough money to eat and to pay for my martial arts training. And then I'd put money aside, and after 6 months or so, I'd be able to take a trip and train someplace. So I'd go to the Philippines, I'd go different places so I could go and train with different types of martial artists. So what does that have to do with language? Well, I'll tell you. Some very interesting things would come up. So first of all, when I was growing up, I grew up in a place called Carson, California. Carson is very diverse, and a lot of Filipinos. There are more Samoans than in the capital of Samoa, in the city of Carson. So I grew up hearing Tagalog, and actually a lot of Ilocano, which is a northern dialect, and I heard a lot of Samoan. So already I started to hear different languages, and I'd pick up a little bit, because I'd go to my friend's house. Afterwards, you'd learn the names of all the food, and then you'd pick up hello, goodbye, see you later, all these things. And little by little, I got a little bit of the language. When I was older yet, I decided, you know, I'm going to the Philippines to study. I think I should learn it more. So I got to the point where my metric was, if I'm in a taxi, I could drive about 20 minutes in a taxi, I could hold a conversation. And that helped tremendously, because obviously when someone's trying to teach you, and a lot of people speak English in the Philippines, but a lot of the older masters, they were from the provinces, and they were quite old, and they didn't have quite that grasp of the English language. So that's how I was able to communicate. But then, I'm going to bring my daughter up right now. I'm going to show you another way we would communicate. This is Talina, born and raised in Hawaii. Yay. So an easy way to do it is basically they would just say, oh, hit me here, and they would do something. So then you would go, what was that? And then it would be a process of learning the actual moves. Then it would progress to the sparring part. And the sparring is kind of interesting, because when you're sparring, what happens is one person is trying to hit you, and you're trying to hit the other person. You're trying to avoid being hit at the same time. And so it becomes almost a debate where you are countering their offerings, and you're also putting up little baits to get them to, if it were a debate, get them to say something that you can take advantage of. So real quick, we're just going to move a little. Very good. Good job. Good job. Thank you. So what may not be evident there is at certain times I was going and putting my hand out so that she would try to hit it, and when she would try to hit it, I would move So it's basically drawing someone into your game, just like you could do in a debate. She was doing the same thing to me. She was faking and then going for my leg, and she's trying to communicate to me that she's going to hit me in the head. When she communicates to me she's going to hit me in the head, then I'm going to respond to that, of course, which would leave a pathway open to the leg shot. So, and then over time you get to where you recognize all the draws and it makes it a little difficult. So, as far as the martial arts goes, the idea is to be able to read an opponent and use that understanding of the language so that you can counter their language, okay? Now, I think the most important part of language for me in my martial arts career has been going to different places, even in America and Hawaii, is to actually feel what people are saying without the actual spoken word. So for example, so imagine, poof, you're in South Africa, okay? I was told that there was this art the Zulu tribe in South Africa used, and it was a stick fighting system, and I was very, very interested in it, and someone in England, when I was there helping with the seminar, gave me a documentary. So I was able to see this on video. I got to see this documentary. I went to South Africa to shoot a movie, and while there I was able to track down the producer of that documentary and then told him I really wanted to go out into the Zulu areas and learn stick fighting from them directly, which he did not believe. He was like, yeah, sure you do, sure, heard that one before. But a little coaxing, and then when I showed up, he was shocked that I actually flew down to Durban and then drove about 2 hours out into the hills into the Zulu area, KwaZulu Natal, to actually meet with these people. And it was amazing. It was amazing. So of course the guys, so basically in Zulu culture, everybody does stick fighting. It's like basketball here. Pretty much everybody, even if you don't play on a team, you know what basketball is, you know what it looks like, you understand the goals and all. Almost everybody, including the women, just to be clear, are proficient in stick fighting because it's a way to develop courage, and it's just part of the culture. So how am I going to learn this? So the first day the guys, like I said, the group I was training with were young men. And they look at me like, okay, this is weird. This guy's out here. And so this is my first lesson. So in Zulu stick fighting, let me see if I get a picture. There we go. So if you look at me, I have a long stick in my left hand, and that's what they call opogo, the defending stick. It's a defending stick, so it's for blocking everything. Now, if I had this stick in my hand and I'm blocking, you can see my hand is vulnerable, so it could be hit. So there's a cowhide shield that you hold to protect that hand. Because if you saw with my daughter just a moment ago, when we were doing the stick fighting, I have my stick in my right hand and my right foot is forward, so I can get reach, very much like fencing. But when you have a shield, now you put the shield in the front, you put the stick in the rear, and now you're doing all this motion to fake the person out while blocking everything. So now my partner here in this video, this photo, he actually has the big battle shield, but usually you have the small one. So what do you think? Think about it. So if they're going to teach me Zulu stick fighting, what do you think the process is? What is the progression? Right? Maybe they go, okay, this is the first strike, and you block it like this. No, not like that, but like this. And go through a whole progression of the attacks, how to defend each attack. And then when they feel comfortable, maybe show some combinations, things like that, right? Okay, this was the first lesson. Comes up now. I have a translator with me, a Zulu man who spoke English, but my first partner comes up, puts the defending stick in my hand, puts the shield on my hand, hands me a stick. He then picked up his and he made a universal gesture that pretty much everybody will understand immediately without knowing any Zulu. He goes, and we started fighting. That was the first lesson. Because guess what? The whole idea is to learn how to fight, so they're like, well, let's just start fighting and see what's going to go. But thankfully for me, they had amazing control, and they blocked everything I was throwing at them, and the ones that they would land on me, they would just touch. So the stick, you can kind of see, has a ball at the end of it, so they just be able to just touch very lightly. So I went out that first day with nothing, no injuries or anything. But that was the lesson. So using that kind of a, quote, language that everybody understands, like, okay, let's go, that was how I began learning. Then over time, what they would do is, as they would hit, they would show what they were doing to me, and I would pick it up that way. And then I show up the next day, and they're really surprised. Like, he's back? He's still here? And then after a couple days, then it was like we were family. And every time I would go subsequently, when I would show up at the village unannounced, they would throw a big party, and then we would stick fight for days, and it was fabulous. Now, if I had relied on English, if I had used my translator, solely my translator, and I didn't think of this at the time, it was just in retrospect, I think I would have had a very, very different experience, because it would have been very analytical. I would have used my science background, and let's try to categorize everything right now. Let's do this. But when we speak, aren't we very fluid with it? It's a give and take. It goes where it goes when we're having a conversation. And that is really one of the best ways to learn too. We can learn by memorization, but then memorization doesn't always translate to performance. So imagine, let's say, baseball. Imagine you learned exactly how to swing, and you learned the names of, all the terms for baseball and all that. That doesn't mean you can play baseball. So we actually have to get there and play the game. I'm going to switch to learning languages now, and I'll come back to some other stories. Learning language, how many people here are learning a language currently other than what they've learned? Awesome, okay. Now, it's easy, right? It just only takes a couple weeks and you're good, right? No. It is hard to learn a language. At least it was hard for me. Like I said, I heard Tagalog, or Ilocano and Tagalog growing up, and I heard some Samoan growing up, a little bit of Spanish, but when I learned Spanish in school somewhat, when I really started learning, the first thing I learned was Italian. Because I went to Italy, and they had me for seminar, and it became clear that I was going to be going back. And when you're teaching the seminar, and you say, okay, now first, you get into this stance, and what I want you to do is think about this. As I feint up high to bring the opponent's attention up, then you have to wait for that all to be translated. Okay, then, it becomes very slow. So I thought, I have a goal. My goal is to be proficient enough in Italian that I can teach my seminars in Italian. Well, it took 8 years. And if people ask me, where did you learn Italian? I always tell them in the bathroom, because that's where I would read my books all the time. And then I'd go to Italy and I'd learn things there. But let me show you a little something in Italy. That's a seminar in an ancient Roman forum where they actually had gladiator fights, and was able to teach there. But it's interesting that as I'm learning Italian and I'm getting better at it, would I ever make mistakes, you think, with my Italian? Was that a possibility? Yeah, of course. You make lots and lots of mistakes. So when we're learning languages, one of the things that people do is you won't speak the language. You'll go to Italy and you won't speak it. You'll have an opportunity someplace, you just won't speak it because you don't want to look bad, you don't want to make a mistake. But that's what you have to do to get better at the language. It takes courage. Martial arts, one of the greatest things about martial arts is you learn about courage. Like, how do you, who knows, what's the definition of courage? Anybody? Yes? That's exactly right. Did everybody hear that? It's being willing to do something that you're afraid of doing even though you're afraid. So it's taking action despite being afraid. If you're not afraid and you do something, it's not courageous. Courage is when you overcome the fear and do it anyway because you know it's the best thing to do. And if we can get over that fear of failing, whatever you're trying to do in your life, you're going to make so much more progress. So language-wise, I encourage all of you to do your best to find someone speaking the language you want to speak and just speak it and make mistakes and they'll correct you. And almost always they're really, really, really nice about it. Of course, I'm going to tell you a little story later on where I made a big mistake in Italian. I'll say that till the end so you can have a laugh on your way out. Laugh at me. Tell you another communication story in martial arts. So you see this is a padded stick. So if we hit each other, if you get hit in the face, it does not feel good at all. A black eye and such, you can actually do some damage with this. But it's somewhat forgiving. So imagine, actually, Dr. McRae, if you could show those sticks right there. See these? And if he clicks those together, yeah, those are some serious, serious sticks. Thank you. You get hit with that, and you're not just looking at, it hurts, you're looking at injury, possibly. So I did a lot of stick fighting tournaments. Of course, I'm sure all of you have done that, right? And these stick fighting tournaments, we have a helmet, we'd have lots of protective equipment, gloves, the whole thing, and we would use, those are rattan, not bamboo, but rattan sticks, hard sticks, but we'd use very thin sticks to minimize the chance of injury, of course, because you don't want to go play a sport and get injured. Or sometimes we'd do sparring where we had the helmet and not all the protective equipment on, and we'd use the soft stick. And we'd still have hand protection and such, again, because the protections. Well, one night after finishing training at my instructor school, one of the other students comes up, introduced me as this real big guy, 6'5", just a big, big guy, and says, hey, you know, he likes to stick fight, and I told him you like to stick fight too, actually do the fighting part, and he was wondering if you guys could, you know, do some fighting. I'm like, sure, that sounds great, because it's fun to spar with other people you don't know, just like if you get to go speak whatever the language is with someone you don't know, you might get a different sort of communication and learn some new words. I said, okay, great. So he comes up after he gets ready, and he says, I'm going to wear this helmet. So, okay, great, we're having the helmet on. Then he comes up, you see those sticks? They're actually bigger sticks. They were thicker, and they're even longer. These were massive, heavy sticks. And I remember thinking, he says, is it okay if I use this? And I said, sure, I have one just like it. I was retrieving mine from my bag, and I remember thinking, I don't know if this is going to be fun, because if we use big, heavy sticks like that, we're going to have to go really slowly to make sure nobody gets hurt, right? And so, okay, so we go out and start, but, you know, let's go have some fun. And we go like this, and we get ready to start, and he drops down and rips a full power shot at my unprotected kneecap, which fortunately, I was able to move my leg and did not get a broken kneecap. I'm like, what is going on here? Then he rips one up at my head, and I block it, thankfully. And so this goes on for a couple minutes. He tries several times to hit me in the knee, full power. And finally, the round is over, and I'm thinking, what is wrong with this guy? And, you know, you would think someone would just stop and go, oh, you know, let's not do this, right? But no, you know, the ego gets in the way and all. And you're like, I'm a young man, I can do it, right? So I kept doing it. We stop, and I look at him, and he comes up to me, gives me a big hug, and goes, I was trying to hit you in the knee. I couldn't get your knee. God, it was great. What's wrong with this guy? But Was there a little miscommunication there, you think, at the beginning? Yeah, see, he was going to fight, and I was going to spar. And I didn't realize we were actually going to fight. And so those sort of things, to me, in my whole life since then, I've been very clear on my communications if I'm going to spar with somebody. Because the language we used was, do you want to fight? Yes. Can we use this heavy stick and almost no protection? Yes. And my assumption was, from previous training, that we're going to go in a method to make sure we really make sure we don't hurt each other. But his was a whole nother idea. And so I encourage you, if you do anything somewhat dangerous or out there, make sure it's very, very clear. But that would have been a situation where the verbal language I didn't understand. The first time he tried to hit me, it became very clear of the language. In Tagalog, Ilocano. So Tagalog is the national language of the Philippines. Anybody speak Tagalog here? Anybody from the Philippines? So that's the national language of the Philippines. In one of the northern provinces, it's Ilocano. So it's Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur. There are two provinces, and the language is Ilocano. And a lot of the people that moved to Los Angeles and to Hawaii for farm working way back and then ended up in LA, they were Ilocano. So they tell a story. And we're talking about a little miscommunication, other miscommunication. This is just straight on. So the story is, there's a Tagalog guy, and he happens to be in the Ilocos region, and he goes and climbs a coconut tree because he sees some coconuts and he wants to get a coconut. So he climbs a tree, and he's up there trying to get it. An Ilocano guy comes up and sees the coconut, and apparently didn't see the guy, and goes, oh, I want the coconut, starts shaking the tree. So the Tagalog guy says, wug, wug, which means stop, stop. But wug in Ilocano means shake. So again, language can help us, and language can really send us in the wrong direction. In Hawaiian, anybody been to Hawaii before? Yeah? You like Hawaii? Not bad, huh? Not too bad at all. So there's a deep culture, and I am fortunate to live in an area where there are a lot of native Hawaiians. I have a lot of friends. I have a Kumu, who's an instructor, who teaches Hawaiian also. And so I've learned Hawaiian, then he moved away, so it's hard to continue with those for right now. But he was telling me about just the word for mountain, right? So in English, pretty much we say, okay, here's a mountain, right? That's a mountain. We know what a mountain looks like. In Ilocano, Mauna is a large mountain. And like we have Mauna Loa on the Big Island. And it's a very, very large island. So that's Mauna. But we also have Uka, which is sort of pointed mountains. So the mountain is still a mountain, but it's more of an edge. It goes up and comes straight down. There's Kuahivi. Kuahivi is another type of the jagged sort of mountains. There's Nu'u. Nu'u is where the peak of the mountain comes, but it's still a certain type of mountain. And all of these different words kind of show the depth of the Hawaiian language. And again, going back to aloha. Can we talk about aloha for a second? Sound good? So aloha, there's two words, alo and ha. And alo means a presence, ha means breath, presence of breath. So aloha means sort of life. But then you probably have heard that it means love. And actually, guess what it means? It means both. And when you're learning a new language, so I personally, I speak Italian fluently, I speak French fluently. I can still get by in Spanish and Portuguese, and I can get by in Tagalog. But as you're learning those languages, or whatever language you're learning, the depth of the language, like this, can be an issue. So when I went to learn Italian, because I wanted to teach my seminars, and now I can teach seminars in Italian, what I found out was, guess what? I still can't teach everything because there are some words so deep that I don't know all the depth of it, so I still have to have the translator. And that's when we go back to the demonstration or get the translator to show the depth of it. Now, I want to show you my friend here. This is my buddy in Italy who set that whole thing up at the Roman Colosseum. Not the Colosseum in Rome, but a Roman Colosseum. So here, again, what kind of communication you think we're using there? What kind of language? You think we were talking a lot? No. We're actually using the language. And this gentleman showed me something very interesting. He showed me a way to fake from the outside to the inside, but go all the way down and hit low inside the calf, which all of you are like, who cares? Who would ever need that? Well, that's, I don't know, somehow that interests me. Interesting, he hit me inside the calf. That's how I learned this from him. And I had a big bruise on my calf. And you know what? 3 years later, I still had the bruise on my calf. Yeah, explain that. Going and doing these different things, going to different places also took me to other lands, such as a place called Réunion Island. How many people know where Réunion Island is? Oh, you do? How do you know about Réunion Island? That's correct. If you go to South Africa and you go due east, you go over Madagascar, and there's a little island out there, and there's Réunion Island. And why do you know that? Good for you. It is. It's a French island. It's a French island, so it's actually a state of France, but it's an 11-hour flight from France. So teaching there, I happened to meet that lady. That's my wife. That's Talina's mom. And let me tell you a little story about what happened there. So interesting. So there's a Réunion Island Creole. So I'm there to teach martial arts. But there's this Réunion Island Creole, which means it has a lot of French, but there's a lot of mixture of other languages as well. African languages and such, many, many different languages. So there, when French people come down, and you know, sometimes people come from a mainland and they're not so respectful of the people or the land that they're going to. And so the Creole people will speak Creole in front of them, and they will, and in French. Anybody, how do you say ear in French? Anybody know? Oreille, right, oreille. So if you make the plural, it's les oreilles, les oreilles, right? So in Creole, they call foreigners from the mainland oreilles. And why do they call them oreilles? Because they'll start talking and the French person will go, huh? What? Huh? So it's oreilles. When I was trying to impress my wife-to-be, I asked a friend, how do I say something really sweet to her in Creole? What can I say really sweet to her in Creole? So they said, okay, do this. Now, there are these things, bonbons. So we know a bonbon is basically a sweet, but their bonbon, they have something like a falafel. So this bonbon piment. Bonbon piment is this amazing, very much like a falafel, but it has this spicing from Réunion Island, and it's just delectable, and they sell them on the street corners. You see them all over the place. So I had these already. I love them. Well, my friend says, tell her, ou les deux comme un bonbon miel, miel being honey. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go tell her that you are sweet like a honey bonbon, like one of these things with the honey. That's what I'm going to do. I go up to her. Ou les deux comme un bonbon piment means you're sweet like a salty bonbon. It worked, though. Apparently it worked. It came out all right in the end. Other miscommunications when you're doing language. And this is all through my martial arts history. You know, I was thinking about maybe talking about all these different terminologies in martial arts and all the terms, but I think you understand it's a foreign language and you use different terms from another language. Let me show you this. I'm in Manila one time for training, and I see this guy. So in Manila, outside of banks and outside of places, a lot of times you'll see a guard, and they will actually have a shotgun. okay? And they're holding the shotgun or it's strapped over them, and they will have these shotgun shells, a bandolier of shotgun shells. So I go up to this, I see this guy, and I'm like, man, I'd really like to take a picture of him, because he's standing up on these, you know, up on these steps sort of thing in front of this hotel, and it's like, man, I'd like to get, so I went up, and again, I said, excuse me, do you mind if I take a picture? He goes, photo? I said, yeah. He goes, oh no, come here, right? So this is what, boom, there he is, right? Taking the photo with the guy with, now this is a security guy with a shotgun, and it's probably loaded. And he's got his bandolier, you see on his waist, he's got all these shotguns. He's like, come here, take a photo with me, okay? Cool, right? You want to see Filipino hospitality? There you go. Right there, right in Manila, in front of a very nice hotel. It's like, here, have the shotgun. Here, have the shotgun shells. Which is the benefit, again, if you speak a little of the language and you just go out, you know, talking about courage again. And we're like, you know, do we really want to talk? I don't want to make a mistake. You know, the other part of courage is just going and talking to people that you don't know. And that's something I got from martial arts, is just kind of this thing of like, you know, I can go up and talk to anybody. Like anybody. Smile, talk to anybody. And personally, for all of the people I train, thankfully all over, what would you think my #1 goal would be as a teacher of martial arts? What do I want in the end? If I train someone over the years, what quality do you think I want that person to develop? Any idea? Like good fighting ability? Yes, that would be really good. I want them to be honest, have the courage to be honest and tell the truth, even when it's not good for them. And also, though, the #1 thing is I want them to be so confident in themselves that they can walk up to anybody and smile and say hello. And doing that, that's how I got to end up doing that. And I highly suggest, because what's language again is communication. And if you can communicate with a smile, we tend in our society, Hawaii is a little different, we're more open. There's more openness in Hawaii. But people tend to walk around with their head down and not look, you know, because we're afraid something's going to happen. I grew up in LA and in Carson, and basically you don't talk to someone you don't know because they could be a bad guy. But it turns out if you actually talk to people, you look them in the eye, it's going to be good. As a matter of fact, the Samoan culture, if you're walking down the street and there's a Samoan person, and you kind of glance and you look at them and you look away, that is a huge insult. I mean, you can actually have some issues, like serious issues. So I would encourage you as you go on to get that courage to actually be able to talk to anybody you like. Gosh, I have so much stuff to pass on here. You know, in the Philippines, they call me Burting or Bertito. Italy, they call me Baton. In Japan, they call me Bato-san. Interesting that I get to teach martial arts in Japan. It's kind of strange, right? I've had some very, very good experiences. The gentleman on the far right was another one of Bruce Lee's students, Richard Bustillo. Gentleman in the middle was one of the top fighters from Japan, and there we are. And then one time went over, some of these guys are a little bigger than me. I don't know, you judge. What do you think? A little bigger? Yes. So when you're dealing with someone like this, it's a whole nother thing. But these guys are from Hawaii, so we had good fun over there, right? It's amazing to see somebody that big, that's so athletic, can move so fast, and is so good at martial arts. It's kind of scary. And the amount of food they can eat is frightening as well. Let's see. This I want to show you. So then, met my wife. We got married, and then she wanted to go and do stick fighting as well with the guys. So, gentleman on the left of the screen, he was one of my primary sparring partners. The gentleman on the right was another. Now, gentleman on the right, he actually, so Shaka Zulu, way back when, changed warfare for the Zulu tribe. And what he did, it used to be that you'd take the big shield, take 5 spears or so, you run toward the enemy, you throw the 5 spears, and then you run back. You might pick up the spears that they're throwing at you. That was warfare. And Shaka Zulu said, you know what? This is cowardice. And his whole thing was courage. This is cowardice. So he actually invented this short spear. The blade itself is about this long, and then there's a handle. So it's about like this, and it was a stabbing spear. Okay, now this is going to sound ugly, because it is ugly. But what they would do in warfare is instead of throwing the spears and running away, they would charge, get to close quarters, knock the other guy's spear away, and they would stab with this giant spear. And that's what took the Zulu tribe from 200 people to tens of thousands by the time Shaka Zulu died. So imagine this thing. So I got to learn how to do that as well without, actually using it. So the person on the left actually made me a spear before I left. He made one, he presented it to me to take home. Now, if, you might think of what is it like in a Zulu village? Okay, and we have something in our mind. You get there, and guess what? It's different, right? He had an idea of Los Angeles, and he told me with this spear, he says, and he said this through a translator, of course. He says, keep this in your car, because if someone comes up and gives you a hard time, roll down the window and just different concept of what Los Angeles, well, not that different, but a little different concept there. Let's see. Gosh, we're running out of time. Let me talk about self-talk a little bit. The most important language that I've learned or been aware of in my life is the internal dialogue. Internal dialogue. Because we will often tell ourselves we can't. We will often say, chide ourselves, and we will just basically beat ourselves up. You do something wrong, you beat yourself up. This is not helpful. As a martial arts coach, what I need to do is I encourage mistakes, and then we use those to coach from and make people better. And that's what we need to do in life. We have the courage to go and take action, even though, like we were saying earlier, even though we may be afraid to do it, you take action anyway. And then you get a result, and you can fix the result, and then you just keep going. But to do that, we have to be our own cheerleader, our own coach, and constantly going, no, we can do it. Let's go do it. Let's continue and do it. It's very, very important. Of all the language is that self-talk. If you start listening to yourself, you might hear a lot of negativity, and we have to turn that positive. One of the easiest ways to do that is just simply say no. When you start to hear that negative, just no. And I learned all of this through martial arts. And, imagine some of my students or, guys I coached, they're going to go fight in the UFC at a very, very high level, at the top level. And they're going to go out, like one of my fighters, a guy named Chris Lieben, he would say, he goes, I'm going to go out and I'm going to fight, and I might get beat up. I might get knocked out in front of my friends and my family who came to watch. It's a lot of pressure. And it's very easy in training to get down on yourself, but the way to do your best is to constantly say, no, I'm just going to keep going. I, quote, failed, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to use that and learn from it. So I just really encourage you to that self-talk to overcome that. Okay, I'm going to show you couple more photos first. This is a man named Antonio Illustrissimo. This guy actually had sword fights. Right? He's passed away now. But imagine this man still living, and in his time, he actually fought with swords, and his language was purely movement. He spoke very little English. And it was all about movement and the feel. He transferred this art to me over training and such through touch. And there are a lot of parts of the martial arts where the touch is so important, because by the time you look and try to make a response to it, it's too late. You have to feel what's happening. And just another way of language and communication in martial arts. Two more things. Tell you about something that happened. A couple guys, well, first of all, let me grab a stick. Like many martial arts, there are salutes. And in Filipino martial arts, this is a common salute. If you want to be more respectful, you give a more complete salute like this. So this denotes a great deal of respect. So I knew some guys, these young guys, they were training Filipino martial arts, they were Filipino descent in Los Angeles. They're going to go to the Philippines, and they were determined to go find an old master and learn stick fighting from this person. They go out there in the province, and guess what? They actually found an old man. And so then, now these old guys are, they're known for making, talking about feeling, like whacking you in the hand and doing things, so you really appreciate what it is and how to work with it. And so they're like, man, who's going to feed this guy? Because somebody's going to get probably going to get hit in the hand. There's a good chance. And so what they did is they did a little Genitore, and one of the guys was chosen as the guy. So he went up and he wanted to show absolute respect. So he went in front of the old man who had a stick also. So he went with his stick and he went. At which the old man went because he thought he was attacking him. So if you're going to use a language, it's probably good to make sure the other person knows your language so you don't get whacked in the head. Gosh, I have about, okay, guys, we are out of time. Let me just, two points I want to bring up. One point and then the story from Italy. Disappointed versus discouraged. So we're going back to that word courage. In order to do things, if you have a goal, and in order to reach it, you have to have courage to take the action, and also because things aren't always going to go your way, you have to have the courage to continue. So I would tell you, in my journey, there are a lot of things I've tried to do and they failed miserably. And you can be disappointed, and you can allow yourself to be disappointed in life when you're striving for a goal. But what you cannot let yourself do is become discouraged. Because what is discouraged? What does that word mean if we're looking at precisely at the language? It means lacking courage now. Without courage, you can't do it. Once you become discouraged, that means I don't have the courage to continue, and you're going to quit. And you are the only one that can say, I quit. So know that things are going to come up. You're going to try things, and they're not going to work out, and you're going to feel bad. You can be disappointed, but do not allow yourself to get into discouragement, because you can bounce back, and you will bounce back, and you will end up using it. A lot of the things that were really bad that happened in my life, you end up looking back and you go, wow, I'm glad that happened many years later. Okay? And to finish with the story. So I'm in Italy, and I've been studying Italian, and it's getting better. It's not great yet, but I can actually speak a little bit. So the word for parent is genitore, so like progenitor, generational. So a parent is progenitor, basically. And so I wanted to tell my friends there that next time I came to visit, I wanted to bring my parents, right? So, easy. So I have my phrase ready, and I say, and I have a bunch of friends around me, la prossima volta, the next time, vorrei portare, I want to bring I miei genitali, my genitals. At which time, my friends just razzed me so bad. Like, you didn't bring them this time? How does that happen? How does that work? And where are they? Just all over. But see, that's an example of going, I blew it about as bad as you can possibly blow it, but we ended up fun and hopefully put a little smile on your face too. So martial arts, if you're into martial arts, enjoy it. Whatever you want to do, though, I would really highly encourage. I've been able to travel the world, have an amazing thing. I get to take my family with me. Just an incredible life. Whatever you want to do, you have a long time. It doesn't seem like it. You have a long time. Please pursue the things, because if there's something inside you, you can bring something unique that's only you can bring, and you will actually make your study, the people you help, you'll just make it better than anybody else can. All right? We're going to open up for a few questions. Right? Does anybody have any questions? And don't ask me where I left the genitale. Yes, yes. Oh, wait, okay, we have a microphone coming. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear. Maybe I should have asked them for the microphone. Or you can come up if it's easier. Thank you.
Did you actually follow that guy's advice and put the spear in your car?
I did not, actually. You know, that would have been, yeah, that could have gotten me in a little bit of trouble. Yeah, if anybody has to leave, just go, feel free, because I did go over a little bit. Any other questions?
I was wondering, how many different martial arts do you know as of currently?
Good question. So I've studied several distinct Filipino martial arts. So I'm an instructor in, three different Filipino martial arts. I am an instructor in Indonesian silat. I'm an instructor in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in Krav Maga, and a South African, actually from Cape Town, there's a knife fighting system called Piper system. I'm an instructor in that as well, also in Thai boxing. And I'm constantly, to this day, I train and I study every day, because there's something in my brain, I don't know what it is. I just continue to study. Thank you. Do you do martial arts at all? There you go, right? Martial arts. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, have you ever sparred with quarterstaffs or ever thought about sparring with quarterstaffs?
I do that very often, actually. And that's actually one of the programs. And so I study, I spar, I test everything, and then I put programs out on video. And that one is going to be coming out next year, because I learn it, and I've learned it for a long, long time. Been almost 40 years of training with the quarterstaff. And then when I'm going to put a program out, I take about a year to go back and redo everything, relook at everything, do the sparring. So yes, it's a wonderful, amazing sort of art. It's like fencing with long sticks. Any other questions? Do you do quarterstaff? That's it. That's quarterstaff. Yes, that's the essence. Oh, very nice. Awesome. Beautiful. Questions? Yes.
Out of all the arts you've trained, what do you feel the most connection to? Like, what's your favorite personally?
I have such a love for all of them, but if I had to choose one for some reason, I love jiu-jitsu, and I love the study of MMA and doing it. I don't like the violence of it, but I'd probably have to say the Filipino martial arts, because it's so vast. Different weapons, you have single stick, double stick, stick and knife, double weapon, sword and shield. You have all these different aspects, plus the empty hand version, and then there's the dance also. Which is, this morning I was doing it, to try to get over the jet lag a little bit. There's this whole cultural dance, which I grew up doing as well. In our elementary school, we learned Filipino and Samoan dances growing up. So if I had to choose one, that would be it. Thank you. I think there was a question. That is a great question. So, do I remember a difficult time and what I learned through martial arts helped me get through that? I think, I went through different difficult times and this and progressing, and I didn't really notice it. But when I had a very major surgery, so I was really sick with the ulcerative colitis after years and years, and I had to have, okay, I'll just say it, my entire colon removed. Beautiful. And this was extremely difficult, arduous surgery. And afterwards, it was extremely painful, and it was just really bad. And I used my martial arts, and according to my wife, I never complained once because I could constantly look at the positive and constantly go, okay, I'm here right now, but I'm not going to be here forever, and we're going to get through it. And just like, for example, jiu-jitsu, you end up on your back and you have somebody much bigger and stronger, and they're just crushing you, and it's very uncomfortable. But if you stay calm and you get everything composed and your arms in the right position and such, you can actually weather the storm, work your way out, and get to a good position. And so that's when it was very clear in my mind that I used this. And I happened to be in really, I'll just say extremely uncomfortable for about 6 months. Like any movement and all was really very tough. But I could have a smile on my face. And then actually even 2 years ago, I went through another thing, related. And I remember being in my bed, being in really bad pain. Okay? And I was happy my martial arts came through because I was able to look out, and in our house, in our upstairs, you look out and you see a breadfruit tree and you see the coconut trees and you can see them waving, 100 yards away at the beach. And I remember laying there and go, well, isn't it nice that this is happening? I'm in this place here instead of being in a bad area at least or something. So there's always something we can look at and find a positive, but that takes training, and it takes training under pressure, because knowing it, going, oh yeah, I'm positive, and everything's great, I'm positive, and then something goes wrong. Well, that's when you find out if you've actually mastered it or not, right? It's when you're under pressure that we actually reveal how well our training has worked. Same in the martial arts. We know a lot of techniques. Now we're under pressure. Someone's actually trying to get you. Can you still apply it when all that pressure is on? So I would say that's a very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. But I'm just so thankful to my instructors. I have so many great instructors all over the world that have been so generous, so incredibly generous to me. Anything they could possibly do for me, they would. And as soon as I could learn something, they'd teach me something else. It's really a beautiful thing. And then I try to emulate that myself, and hopefully we can all emulate that as whoever we're teaching, because everybody here will teach somebody in some fashion at some point. If we can do it from love and compassion. There's a triangle in Kali that at the top, for English, it's an L, a C, and an H. Those are the triangle. The top is for love, and we do our best to have love for all beings. The C is for compassion, because we may not know what other people are going through. It's easy to look at something like, wow, why does that person act like that? But you don't realize they're probably doing pretty well for what they're going through. So we should have compassion for them, especially when we're teaching, at least for my profession. While I'm teaching, some people don't learn fast. And we have to remember, and luckily I didn't learn fast. It was not easy for me, so I can have the compassion and say, just help them along. And then the H is for humility, because no matter how much we know, there's always more to learn, and there's someone we can learn from. So love, compassion, humility, that is a very good to take out and use in our everyday life as well. Thank you. Kick me out. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.